I stood on my parents' porch that cold November evening, my hand hovering over the doorbell. 3 years. 3 whole years since I had set foot in this house. Through the frosted glass, I could see figures moving inside, hear the muffled sounds of laughter and clinking glasses. Trina's engagement party was in full swing, and every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn around and drive back to New York. But I promised my sister I would come. She was the only one who never stopped believing in me, even when our father called my career a disgrace. Little did I know that walking through that door would change everything. Before we dive into what happened next, drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from today. If you enjoy stories about family secrets and unexpected redemptions, hit that like button and subscribe to join our community. Now let me take you back to the beginning to help you understand why crossing that threshold felt like walking straight into a battlefield. My name is Marcus and I just turned 30 years old. To understand what happened at that engagement party, you need to know a little about my family and the path that led me to become the person my father loved to mock. My father, Richard, built his reputation as one of Boston's most successful corporate attorneys. He started his own law firm right after I was born, and by the time I entered high school, his name was synonymous with power in legal circles across Massachusetts. He handled mergers worth hundreds of millions of dollars, represented Fortune 500 companies, and sat on the boards of 3 different charities. To the outside world, he was a pillar of the community. To me, he was a man who measured love and achievements and validation in dollar signs. My mother, Diane, followed a similar trajectory. She graduated top of her class from Johns Hopkins Medical School and opened her own dermatology practice in downtown Boston. Her client list included local celebrities, politicians, and old money families who trusted only her with their cosmetic procedures. She worked 60 hours a week and still managed to host dinner parties for my father's business associates. She was accomplished, elegant, and almost entirely absent from my childhood memories in any meaningful way. Then there was Trina, my older sister by 3 years. She studied architecture at Yale and landed a position at one of the most prestigious firms in Boston before she even graduated. She designed buildings that won award structures that graced the covers of architectural magazines. In my parents' eyes, she was the perfect child, the living proof that their genetics and parenting produced excellence. And then there was me. I tried to fit into their mold. I really did. After high school, I enrolled in Boston University's finance program because my father insisted that business was the only respectable path for a young man of my background. He had already mapped out my future 4 years of undergraduate study, an MBA from Harvard or Wharton, then a position at his firm handling the financial aspects of his corporate clients. My life was planned before I had any say in it. For 2.5 years, I forced myself through those courses. I sat in lecture halls learning about derivatives and market analysis while my soul slowly withered. I stayed up late studying for exams in subjects that meant nothing to me, forcing myself to memorize formulas and theories that I would forget the moment I put down my pencil. Every day felt like drowning in slow motion. During my junior year, I took a part-time job at a bar near campus. It was supposed to be just a way to earn extra money, something to keep me busy on weekends. But something unexpected happened. The moment I stepped behind that bar, I felt alive for the first time in years. There was an art to mixing drinks, a chemistry to balancing flavors, a psychology to reading customers and knowing exactly what they needed before they said a word. I fell in love with the craft, the creativity, the connection with people from all walks of life. 3 months before finishing my junior year, I made the hardest decision of my life. I walked into my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon and told them I was dropping out to become a bartender. The silence lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then my father exploded. He called me a disappointment, a waste of potential, a stain on the family name. He said I was throwing away every opportunity he had worked to provide. He asked me what I planned to tell people at dinner parties that his son mixed drinks for tips like some common service worker. His words cut deep, each one a blade designed to wound. My mother said nothing in my defense. She just sat there, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes avoiding mine. When the shouting finally stopped, she only said, "You should listen to your father, Marcus. He knows what is best." Only Trina stood by me. She found me in the driveway afterward, tears streaming down my face, and she held me tight. She whispered, "It is your life, Marcus. You have to live it for yourself, not for them." 2 weeks later, I packed everything I owned into my car and drove to New York City with $800 in my pocket and no plan beyond following my passion. Those first months were brutal. I slept on a friend's couch, worked double shifts at a dive bar in Brooklyn, and ate ramen noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But I learned. I studied under master bartenders who taught me techniques I never knew existed. I experimented with flavors, created my own recipes, developed a style that was uniquely mine. Within a year, I entered my first bartending competition and placed second. 6 months later, I won another. Word spread about the young guy from Boston who could craft cocktails that told stories. I got hired at progressively more upscale establishments, each one teaching me something new, each one building my reputation. 2 years ago, everything changed. An investor who had become a regular at the bar where I worked offered to back me in opening my own place. We found a location in Manhattan, a historic building with exposed brick walls and soaring ceilings. I named it the Midnight Oak after the massive oak tree in my grandmother's backyard, where I used to hide as a child when my father's expectations became too heavy. The Midnight Oak became a sensation. We were featured in GQ, Esquire, the New York Times, and Food & Wine magazine. Celebrities started showing up, then tech billionaires, then old money elite, who heard about the bartender who could craft any drink you imagined. Reservations filled up months in advance. I hired a staff of 15, then 25. I became what the press called a celebrity bartender invited to exclusive events, asked to create signature cocktails for movie premieres and fashion shows. But I never told my family. Not once in those 3 years did I share my success with my parents. Pride kept me silent. They had dismissed my dreams as worthless, so why should they benefit from knowing those dreams came true? The only exception was Trina. We talked on the phone every few weeks, and while I told her things were going well, I never shared the full extent of what I had built. I suppose I was afraid that even she might not believe me. 3 weeks before the engagement party, my phone rang late one Thursday night. Trina's name lit up the screen, and I answered immediately. We had not spoken in almost a month, both of us caught up in our busy lives. Her voice bubbled with excitement. She told me she was engaged, that Derek had proposed during a sunset cruise in Boston Harbor, that the ring was stunning and the champagne was perfect, and she had never been happier. I listened to her joy, genuinely happy that my sister had found love. Then she asked me to come to the engagement party. I hesitated. The thought of facing my father again, of enduring his condescending remarks and my mother's cold indifference, made my stomach clench. But Trina pleaded with me. She said I was the most important person in her life, that the party would mean nothing without me there, that she needed her little brother by her side. Against every instinct, I agreed. She told me about Derek, describing him as the perfect man. He ran a successful investment firm, came from a good family, and had completely won over our parents. She said our father treated Derek like the son he always wanted, and while those words stung, I swallowed my reaction and told her I was happy for her. When the day of the party arrived, I rented a car and drove the 4 hours from Manhattan to Boston. I deliberately chose simple clothes, dark jeans, and a grey sweater, not wanting to draw attention to myself. This day was about Trina, not about proving anything to anyone. The house looked exactly as I remembered. A sprawling colonial revival on 2 acres of manicured lawn. It stood as a monument to everything my parents valued: success, status, and the appearance of perfection. Cars lined the circular driveway, all luxury models, all polished to showroom shine. I parked at the end and sat there for 5 minutes gathering my courage. Finally, I walked up the stone pathway and rang the bell. My mother answered the door. She looked the same as always, perfectly styled hair, designer dress, pearl earrings that cost more than my first car. Her eyes flickered with something that might have been surprise before her expression settled into practiced politeness. "Marcus?" she said, no warmth in her voice. "You came." She stepped aside to let me in, not offering a hug or even a smile. I entered the foyer and was immediately assaulted by the sounds of the party. Laughter echoed from the living room, glasses clinked, jazz music played softly from hidden speakers. Through the archway I could see maybe 40 guests milling about, all dressed in expensive clothes, all radiating the same air of self-satisfaction. That was when I heard my father's voice. He stood near the fireplace, surrounded by a group of men who hung on his every word. When he spotted me, his eyes narrowed. A smirk twisted his lips as he spoke loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Well, well, look who decided to show up, the bartender." A few people chuckled. My father took a sip of his whiskey, clearly pleased with his own wit. Others turned to look at me, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed disdain. I felt the heat rise to my face but kept my expression neutral. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me react. I scanned the room for Trina, desperate to find the one person who would make this ordeal worthwhile. Then she appeared, pushing through the crowd with her arms outstretched. Her face glowed with genuine happiness as she threw herself at me, wrapping me in a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "You came," she whispered into my shoulder. "I was so afraid you would change your mind." I held her close, this sister who had never stopped loving me despite everything. For a moment, the judgment of everyone else faded away, and I remembered why I had made this trip. She pulled back, tears glistening in her eyes, and grabbed my hand. "Come on," she said. "You have to meet Derek." Trina pulled me through the crowd toward a tall man standing near the bar. He was about 38 with salt and pepper hair styled perfectly, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His smile looked practiced professional, the kind that closed deals and won over clients. Several people stood around him, clearly hanging on his words. "Derek!" Trina called out, her voice bright with excitement. "This is my brother. This is Marcus." Derek turned that practiced smile firmly in place and extended his hand toward me. "So nice to finally meet you. Trina talks about you constantly." The moment our palms connected, everything changed. I watched the color drain from his face in real time, as if someone had pulled a plug and let all the blood rush out. His grip on my hand went slack, then tightened convulsively. His eyes widened, pupils dilating, with what looked remarkably like fear. He recognized me, and in that same instant, I recognized him. "Nice to meet you too," I said evenly, holding his gaze. Derek dropped my hand like it was on fire. He stammered something about needing to check on the caterers, excused himself abruptly, and practically fled across the room. Trina watched him go, confusion furrowing her brow. "That was strange," she said. "He must be stressed about the party. I should go check on him." She hurried after her fiancé, leaving me standing alone near the bar. But I kept my eyes on Derek. I watched him pull out his phone with shaking hands. I watched him type something, his thumbs moving frantically across the screen. I watched his face grow even paler as he stared at whatever results appeared. He was searching for me, looking me up online. And based on his expression, he was finding exactly what I expected him to find. Over the next few minutes, I observed the information spreading through the room like ripples in a pond. Derek whispered urgently to a man beside him, both of them glancing in my direction. That man turned and spoke to someone else. Then another. Phones came out. Heads turned. The atmosphere in the room shifted, curiosity replacing the earlier dismissiveness. An older gentleman broke away from a group near the windows and approached me. He was probably in his mid-60s, distinguished-looking with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. I recognized his type immediately, old money Boston, probably on the boards of several hospitals and museums. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying enough to draw attention from nearby guests. "You are Marcus, correct, Marcus, from the Midnight Oak in Manhattan?" I nodded, suddenly aware that conversations around us were dying down. The man's face broke into a genuine smile. "I thought so. My name is Howard Cranston. My wife threw my 60th birthday party at your establishment 8 months ago. It was absolutely magnificent." He turned to address the people around us, his voice rising with enthusiasm. "This young man," he announced, gesturing toward me, "owns one of the most exclusive cocktail bars in New York City, the Midnight Oak. Getting a reservation there is nearly impossible. They have a 3-month waiting list. The New York Times called it the best bar in Manhattan." Silence fell over the room. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, the weight of their reassessment almost physical. Phones appeared everywhere, screens glowing as people Googled my name and my bar. My mother had stopped mid-conversation, her wineglass frozen halfway to her lips. My father stood rigid by the fireplace, his face cycling through emotions, confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been the beginning of humiliation. But I was not interested in their reactions. My attention was fixed on Derek, who had gone so pale I thought he might actually faint. He knew what was coming. I could see it in his eyes. I cleared my throat, and the room fell completely silent. "Actually," I said, my voice calm and steady, "Derek and I have met before." Trina, who had returned to Derek's side, looked between us with growing concern. "What? When Derek never mentioned knowing you?" "It was about 6 months ago," I continued. "He came into my bar one evening, but he was not alone." Derek's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "He was with a woman. She was about 30, blonde, very attractive. They were quite affectionate with each other. He called her baby multiple times throughout the evening. The gasp that rippled through the room was audible. Trina's face went white. "That is a lie." Derek finally managed his voice cracking. "I have never been to your bar. I have never seen you before tonight." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. "Actually, the reason I remember you so well is because you caused quite a scene. You had too much to drink and started harassing one of my female bartenders. My security team had to escort you out. You were not happy about that. You stood on the sidewalk, shouting about how you would destroy my business, how I had no idea who I was dealing with." I turned my phone around so people nearby could see the screen. I had pulled up the security footage from that night, the timestamp clearly visible, showing Derek with his arm around a woman who was definitely not Trina. "I saved security footage for a year," I said. "Standard practice in the industry. I recognized you the moment I walked in tonight, but I was not sure how to handle it. I did not want to ruin Trina's party." Derek lunged toward me, his face contorted with rage. "Give me that phone. You have no right to show that to anyone." Two men nearby stepped forward, blocking his path. My father had not moved from his spot by the fireplace, but his expression had transformed completely. He stared at Derek like he was seeing him for the first time. "Is this true?" Trina's voice was barely a whisper. "Derek, tell me this is not true." He spun toward her, hands raised in supplication. "Baby, listen to me. He is lying. He is just jealous. He has always been the failure of this family, and now he is trying to sabotage us." "The woman in the video," I said quietly, "she had a distinctive bracelet, gold chain with small emerald stones. Derek was very proud of it when he showed it to her at the bar. He said he had it custom made." Trina's hand flew to her mouth. When she spoke again, her voice shook with barely contained fury. "That is the bracelet you gave Lauren for her birthday. Your assistant. I was there when you picked it out." The silence that followed was absolute. Derek's facade crumbled completely. Gone was the smooth, confident businessman. In his place stood a desperate man watching his carefully constructed life collapse. "Trina, please," he begged, reaching for her. "It was a mistake. It meant nothing. She meant nothing." Trina stepped backward away from his outstretched hands. Her eyes were dry now, shock giving way to cold, crystalline anger. "How long?" she demanded. "How long have you been sleeping with her?" He stammered, tripping over half-formed excuses. The people around them had given them space, but no one was even pretending not to watch. This was better than any reality television show. "Answer me." Trina's voice rose. "You owe me at least that much honesty." Derek's shoulders slumped. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. 8 months, maybe 9. The sound Trina made was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "We have been together for 14 months. You have been cheating on me for more than half our relationship." She looked down at her hand at the massive diamond engagement ring that sparkled under the chandeliers. Slowly, deliberately, she pulled it from her finger. Derek watched with horror as she placed it in his palm. "We are done," she said, her voice steady despite the tears now streaming down her face. "Get out of my parents' house. Get out of my life. Do not call me. Do not text me. Do not come to my office. We are finished." Derek looked around wildly, searching for an ally, someone to defend him. His eyes landed on my father. "Richard, please. You know me. You know the kind of man I am. This is all a misunderstanding. You cannot let this happen." My father had been silent throughout the confrontation. Now he stepped forward, and for a moment I was not sure what he would do. He had always valued appearances, connections, business relationships. Derek was exactly the kind of son-in-law he had always wanted. But when he spoke, his voice was ice. "I believe you know where the door is, Derek. I suggest you use it before I call the police and have you escorted out." Something broke behind Derek's eyes. He looked around the room one final time, perhaps hoping for some last-minute intervention. Finding none, he straightened his jacket with trembling hands and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted for him like water around a stone. No one said a word. No one offered comfort or support. The front door closed behind him with a sound that echoed through the silent house. The party dissolved quickly after that. Guests made hasty excuses and departed, eager to escape the awkwardness, and equally eager to spread the gossip. Within an hour, only family remained. Trina sat on the couch in the living room, surrounded by crumpled tissues, her makeup ruined by tears. My mother sat beside her for the first time in my memory, actually being maternal, actually offering comfort. She held Trina's hand and murmured soft words I could not hear. I stood by the window, watching the last cars pull out of the driveway, not sure where I fit in this new landscape. My father's footsteps approached from behind. He came to stand beside me, both of us looking out at the empty lawn. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology," he said. I turned to look at him, not quite believing what I had heard. "I was wrong about you, Marcus." The words seemed to cost him physical effort. "I was wrong about your choices, your career, your character." I was so focused on what I thought success should look like that I could not see what was right in front of me. I waited, not willing to make this easier for him. "You built something real," he continued. "Something impressive. But more than that, you told the truth tonight, even though it was hard. You protected your sister when none of us could. That took courage." He finally met my eyes. "I am proud of you. I should have said that years ago." I thought about all the nights I had dreamed of hearing those words. All the years I had pretended not to care while secretly craving his approval. Now that the moment had arrived, I found that the wound was too deep to heal with a single apology. "Thank you," I said simply. "It means something to hear that." He nodded, accepting that reconciliation would take time. "Will you stay tonight? At least your mother is making up your old room." I considered the offer. Part of me wanted to flee back to New York to the life I had built without them, but another part recognized that tonight had broken something open, created a possibility for healing that had not existed before. "I will stay," I said. Later that night, Trina found me in the kitchen. Her eyes were still red, but she had stopped crying. She looked exhausted, but somehow lighter, like a burden had been lifted even as a new pain settled in. "I almost married him," she whispered. "If you had not come tonight, if you had not recognized him, I would have married a liar and a cheat." I pulled her into a hug. "You deserve someone who truly loves you, someone who respects you enough to be honest." She laughed bitterly against my shoulder. "You would think I could spot a con man. I analyze structural integrity for a living. I should have seen that he was hollow." "People are not buildings, Trina. You cannot always see what is inside." She pulled back and studied my face. "Tell me about your life, Marcus. Your real life. Not the abbreviated version you give me on our phone calls. Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about the early struggles, the tiny apartment, the 80-hour weeks. I told her about the competitions I won and the ones I lost. I told her about the investor who believed in me, about building the Midnight Oak from an empty shell into something that mattered. I told her about the famous people who had become regulars, the articles that made my phone ring for days, the satisfaction of creating something with my own hands and my own vision. She listened to it all, her eyes growing wider with each revelation. "Why did you never tell me?" she asked when I finished. "I knew you were doing well, but I had no idea it was like this." "Pride, Ash," I admitted. "Dad made me feel like my dream was worthless. Some part of me wanted to prove him wrong, but another part was afraid that if I told you everything, it still would not be enough. Nothing ever seemed to be enough for this family." Trina took my hands in hers. "I am so sorry you felt that way. You should know that you have always been enough for me. You have always been exactly the brother I needed." We talked until nearly 3 a.m, rebuilding the connection that distance and family dynamics had strained. By the time I finally went upstairs to my old bedroom, something fundamental had shifted between us. The weeks that followed brought changes I never expected. Trina came to visit me in New York on a Saturday, 3 weeks after the party. I gave her a tour of the Midnight Oak, introduced her to my staff, showed her the private booth, where a certain famous actor liked to sit when he wanted to avoid paparazzi. She walked through the space with the analytical eye of an architect, complimenting the design choices, asking about the renovation process, genuinely interested in every detail. That night, I made her my signature cocktail, the one that had won me my first major competition. She sipped it slowly, savoring each note, and told me it was the best drink she had ever tasted. Coming from a woman whose palate had been refined by years of expensive wines and exclusive restaurants, that meant more than any magazine review. A month after that, my father made an unexpected appearance. He flew to New York on a Wednesday, showed up at the bar without calling ahead, and asked if he could watch me work. I set him up at the end of the bar with a glass of his favorite whiskey and proceeded to handle the dinner rush. For 3 hours, he watched me mix drinks, manage staff, greet regulars, and handle the 100 small crises that arise in any busy hospitality venue. When the rush finally slowed, he motioned me over. "This is something special," he said quietly. "What you have built here. It is not what I imagined for you, but I was wrong to think my imagination should limit your possibilities." We did not embrace or have any dramatic reconciliation. That was not our style. But when he flew back to Boston the next morning, something between us had shifted from hostility to grudging respect. It was a start. My mother began calling every Sunday evening just to talk. At first, our conversations were awkward, both of us navigating unfamiliar territory. But gradually, they became something I looked forward to. She asked about my week, about my staff, about the challenges of running a business. She shared stories about her patients, about the changing neighborhood in Boston, about her attempts to learn Italian cooking. Trina and I grew closer than we had ever been. She visited New York almost monthly, and I made the trip to Boston for holidays I had avoided for years. She started dating again a few months after the broken engagement, a quiet architect from her own firm who looked at her like she hung the moon. I met him over dinner and gave my approval for whatever that was worth. As for Derek, I heard through the grapevine that his business suffered after the scandal became public knowledge. Several of his major clients dropped him uncomfortable associating with someone whose personal ethics were so clearly compromised. The assistant Lauren apparently left him for someone younger. Last I heard, he had moved to Florida trying to rebuild his career far from anyone who knew his history. I cannot say I felt sorry for him. Looking back on that night, I think about how close everything came to going differently. If I had honored my instinct to stay away to protect myself from my family's judgment, Trina would have married a man who was lying to her from the beginning. My relationship with my parents would have remained frozen in mutual resentment. I would have kept my success a secret, a private victory that warmed no one but myself. Instead, a chance recognition in a crowded living room unraveled everything and gave us all a chance to start fresh. The lesson I took from it is simple but profound. Our worth is not determined by anyone else's opinion, not even the opinions of the people who raised us. Success looks different for everyone, and the path that brings you joy is always the right path, regardless of what others think you should be doing. I walked into my parents' house that night as just a bartender, at least in my father's eyes. I walked out as something more, a brother who protected his sister, a son who finally earned his father's respect, and a man who understood that his value was never anyone else's to define. If you are out there right now feeling like you do not fit in, like your dreams do not make sense to the people around you, I want you to know that it gets better. Keep going, keep building, keep believing in yourself even when no one else does. One day, your truth will speak for itself, and on that day, everyone who doubted you will finally have to listen. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated by your own family? Did you find a way to prove them wrong on your own terms? Share your experience in the comments below. I read every single one, and your story might inspire someone else who is struggling right now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and may you always have the courage to follow your own path wherever it leads.